Welcome back. Now let's turn our attention to education. The state of most government-owned schools in Nigeria is nothing to write home about. Now the irony of this is that the situation can actually be reversed if only state governors will take advantage of funds domiciled in the Universal Basic Education Commission account. Recently, the Executive Secretary of UBEC, Hamid Boboy, announced that 120 billion naira, let me say that again, 120 billion naira is lying in the coffers of the Commission unaccessed by state governments since 2020. So the way it works is this. Part of the basic requirements for state to access federal government's UBEC funding is that states must match the funds they seek to collect with what is called counterpart funding. But UBEC has said most governors are not forthcoming to access the intervention fund, leaving a backlog of 120 billion naira unused. So the failure of governors to raise their counterpart funding has contributed immensely to the huge gap we see in the development of basic education system in their respective states. It's a terrible situation, and it's quite a surprise that this is actually happening, especially in a country where education, there's a basic absence of, think of the basic infrastructure of education you can think about, completely absent. I'm now being joined by Dr. Olunifesi Suraj, who is a UNESCO consultant on media and information literacy and a senior lecturer of mass communication at the University of Lagos. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us on the program. First off, let me ask you, are you surprised that UBEC would say this, 120 billion unaccessed by state governors, when we have even calling some of these schools dilapidated, will be putting it mildly. For some of these public schools, they just don't exist. They're just managing to stay alive. And yet you have this huge amount of money lying unused somewhere.
Believe me, I'm not surprised. And the reason is so clear. Like rightly mentioned, for them to access this fund, they need a counter, the state government need to come up with their own counterpart fund. And because that fund is not forthcoming, they could not access this fund. Believe me and you, if there is no condition for them to access that fund, you will not find a dime in that account.
Oh, really?
Now, it tells you that the priority this government puts on education. Now, coming from a background of once a state governor, and I would not like to mention his name now, when they were dictating for funding of institutions, he said, how much is he realizing from institutions that he will put in his money into it? You see, and that tells you that there's no priority when it comes to education. If that fund is meant to do maybe publicity and public relations to polish their image, and the condition is that just bring in some money from the state to access this fund, I can tell you also that you will not find a dime in that account. Now, it's so unfortunate that we have leaders who care nothing about institutions, about learning, about education. And they have not seen education as a priority. They have not seen it as an institution like a goose that produces the golden eggs. They have not seen it as an institution that raises human capital. They've not realized that when you close education, when you close schools, you are opening the room for all manner of criminals. So they don't prioritize education. I can tell you, if you go around the whole schools now, public school is a mess in this country.
I mean, you don't need to tell me. I have actually gone around. I have seen myself. It's nothing nothing new. It's become the norm, and virtually all states are affected. Even in Lagos State, where we are, there are quite a number of public schools that are really, really bad, that you would never believe they exist in Lagos State. But is it not an irony that you would have this huge amount of money sitting down somewhere? I mean, if a governor, say for instance, if a governor decides that, look, he wants to probably raise, say, 200 million or 500 million, and then there's a matching fund from UBEC of another 500, that's 1 billion. And that 1 billion naira can make a whole world of difference in terms of, infrastructure at that basic level. But we're not seeing that happen. I mean, how does one explain this? Help us to understand this kind of thinking.
It can only happen in a country as ours. That's the truth I can tell you. You see, like I said, ask this state governor how much budget do they have for education. And even when they budget this money for education, how do they utilize this money? I can tell you that most of this money ends up in private pockets. You see, there was a time that the governor of the Govs state, I won't mention it, was trying to put things right. Indeed, he was trying to, refurbish public classrooms. And when he set up a commission for corruption, there was so many of this, most of those money end up either in the principal's pocket or the so-called supervisor from local government, who also collaborate with these principals, to spend the money on their own personal, use. So it's so funny that more money, in fact, we should even thank God that money is still there, 120 billion, and that Nigeria can know that there's 120 billion sitting somewhere. Now, it's so funny that the public classrooms, the public secondary and primary schools are in such a mess, and there's money somewhere, and nobody is accessing when we're talking about it. So it's funny. And you see, like I told you, and it becomes most of them, you see, by extension, if you go to universities right now, most of these public universities are owned by the past leaders. And they don't even care about the public universities. And most of them also have set up their own primary and secondary school, private schools. Nobody send their children, most of these leaders don't send their children to public schools. So public school to them is for, I don't know how to call it, it doesn't matter to them. In fact, it's not even in their dictionary. For them, they're talking about schooling. We're talking about primary school. If you look at it from primary school, it's about private school. So if you're talking about one public school somewhere, they say, are you sure there's still public school in this country? So there is no priority for it. Everybody just sits down in the so-called UBEC, the state UBEC. Tell me what are they doing? They don't visit schools. They don't know what. They don't give reports. If they go to this school to visit, is what they are going to put in their pocket thereafter over there. So there's no anything called needs assessment. There's no anything called how to go about all these things. So it just tell you that we are in a country that is sitting on a gunpowder. That is why, and all these children that are neglecting, that the one that will take up banditry tomorrow, that the one that will become criminals tomorrow, that the one that will take up to fight it tomorrow. Even they are not safe. And
let me just quickly ask you this, because something surprising too from that report. The surprise of it is that from the explanation of the executive secretary of UBEC, it would appear southern states are actually the ones that are not forthcoming as we speak, because from his own explanation, he says the northern states, it would appear, are accessing the funds somehow, even though not satisfactorily, but that from the southern states it's just been bad. Isn't that a surprise for a part of the country that is supposedly known for education, so to speak?
You're very right. It's surprising. And that's what I'm saying. It's because the southern states have commercialized education. You see, education is a public good. Education should be seen as fundamental human right for every citizen. But because in the southern parts, Valley, Lagos, Ogun, this kind of stuff like that, there's so much commercial activities. And then the commercializations of this school has rubbed off on their attention on public schools.
But, but,
So
but, but the sad reality is that there are so many terrible schools in the south of the country. Very terrible schools that one cannot even imagine. And you know the irony of it? These schools are not even located in remote areas. They're actually in cities, they're in towns. We see them.
that is it. That is it. And you see, now I'm telling you that it's about educational infrastructure. The same thing is applicable to other developmental infrastructure. You add rural electrification, we are using it. Rural, what do you call it, broadband, we are using it. These governors concentrate their attentions on the so-called state capitals, the urban areas. Their attention is not on rural areas. What is happening right now and what you have seen in education is a reflection of other developmental projects. That attention, because they don't use it for campaign.
Well,
When they want to bring,
it's really a bad situation, and
no, it's bad. It's terrible. Not only bad.
I really hope that the governors will wake up. It's quite a surprise that the citizens themselves are actually not talking about this. You just can't have 120 billion naira sitting somewhere, and all you just need to access that money is to come up with your own counterpart funding. Yet you have a very huge need. You have a huge need. You don't have good schools, and the money is just there, and you're not doing anything about it.
Let me tell you the reality. The reality is that the citizens are disconnected with government. They don't even have access to push their narratives to the government. The local government in this country is dead.
Absolutely dead.
That is the truth about it. Because if you have a viable local government, the local government in those days, you have a Minister of Education at local government level, you have inspectors at local government level who goes to about visiting schools. So these people are not, you hardly see them. They don't even go there. They sit in their offices and collect a salary and do what they want to do.
Local government is dead, no doubt.
If local government is alive and is right, they are the one that should bring this to the attention of the government. Now, let me tell you, we have instances where local government, so-called local government councillors and chairman are not even living in the area. The people there don't even know them. They don't know their local government chairman and councillors. It is when being to election time, they will surface again. And after they have gotten what they want, you don't get to see them again. So who talk for the people?
Well, Dr. Suraj, I'm afraid we'll just have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we haven't got enough time. But thank you very much for joining us on the program. And thank you for sharing your thoughts with us on this very important issue.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. All right, that's how much we can take on the program this week. We thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.